Daniel Hughes, my husband helped me write his introduction, so I'm just going to preface it by that, Daniel. Okay. Daniel Hughes grew up in rural Hardin County, and he graduated from Upper Scioto Valley, where I am told he was a star athlete by both my husband Curtis and my brother-in-law Jeremy. He actually went to school with my brother-in-law Jeremy at Upper Scioto Valley. He has his undergraduate degree from BGSU and his master's from Bluffton University. He has always had a passion to help the underserved, working for Met Housing in the past. He was the lead pastor of the Future Church, where he built bridges with us here at Shawnee UMC, and eventually becoming an associate pastor here. He then went to lead Shiloh UMC in Cincinnati and currently works for a grassroots organization looking to have an impact in our state. Recently, he worked very hard on House Bill 1 to improve school funding in Ohio. And I know many were excited that he was coming back today and are really eager to hear from him. He is an awesome speaker, and so we all give me a warm round of applause for him.
Good morning, Shawnee. You still do it. I love it. I love it. It's been a while. It's good to be with you. It's an honor to be in this sacred space. So many memories. Thank you for the invitation to come and just share a few thoughts. I love the idea of homecoming because home has been something that I've been longing for. Outside of my own family, I have my mother here. It's an honor to be here with Annie Mae Hughes from Alabama. And thank you. She's been a rock in my life, and my late father from Greenwood, Mississippi. They moved up to Lima and fell in love, and then moved out to Roundhead and decided to move us to Roundhead. And I was out there at 6 months old when they started the church in Lima. And so they built that church, led that church until my father was ill with cancer. And then right around 98, 99, I took over and began to lead the Future Church. And so Shawnee is special to me for a variety of reasons, and I'll get into that in a bit, but in 2010, the shooting of 08, that's where I met Brian, and then we built that relationship, and then in 2010, I realized that I wanted to go into full-time ministry. I didn't know what that was going to look like. And Shawnee took a risk on me and was a landing place for me, and I found belonging here, which is different from, for me, it's different from, belonging is different from being welcome. I'm welcome in a lot of places, but I don't necessarily feel like I belong in a lot of places, if that makes sense. And I felt like I belonged not because I looked like you or came from Lima and I had all the relationships, but there was something about the spirit here in Shawnee. There was something about the people who you allowed me to kind of figure this thing out. And this notion of home that I was looking for outside of my family, I started to find that here in the relationships with folks. And got to serve with Charlotte and so many others, and it was just a really important time in my life. And then as I look back on it, sometimes in life you have to look back to understand the meaning and the significance of things. And Shawnee was extremely significant, and you all were extremely significant. And so hopefully I have a few things to share that might speak to the moment that we're in. I love the children walking in and out. And make it, no, I like that, no, for real. That reminds me of the Future Church. That's how we with the kids would just make noise, and that helps me out a lot. My mom told me to always pay attention to the children. She said, you can't trust the adults, you can trust the children. Yes, ma'am. So when I left Roundhead, when I left USV, and it wasn't hard to be an athlete at USV, it's just trust to believe. There were only like 5 guys in the school, so it's not like being an athlete at Lima Senior. But when I left Roundhead, there was a question that I had. I didn't realize that I was asking this question. And it had to do with my identity. I wanted to know who I was. Because I had some really, some harsh experiences, some confusing experiences around this notion of race. And I'm like, what does it really mean to be a black man America? What does it mean for me to be a man? Who am I? And why do I matter? And I would say, life happens, and then probably, maybe last year, I think I finally developed the answer to that question, and I just started to write it down. And if I could, I'd just like to share these thoughts that I had with you, and then I'll go into some more of what I have for you. So this is the question of who am I and why do I matter? And I offer this to you because sometimes you just have to be reminded of who you are. And coming back home always reminds me of who I am. I tell people that I am fully and truly Ohio born and bred. Born and raised in Northwest Ohio. That's my family, that's my root, that's my rootedness. I'm grounded in Northwest Ohio. But I did work in Southwest Ohio in Cincinnati and really getting that thing going. But I found rest in Southeast Ohio in this little place called Hope Springs. And it's just this beautiful landscape down the foothills of Ohio. And I'm looking to build more power with Northeast Ohio. I am Ohio. I am a Buckeye and a Bearcat and a Falcon and a Flashes. I am a Beaver. I am a Ram. I'm a Spark. I'm Ohio. I love us. I love us. And wherever I go, I represent us. And so this question of who am I and why do I matter eluded me for a long time. And so I just want to share this thought. And then, like I said, I'm going to jump into really my topic. So who am I and why do I matter? Mama said, God called me to be Daniel. And God said, let us make Daniel in our image and likeness. I want to believe what you say about me. But honestly, I don't know. I've spent so much time trying to be like you, trying to live up to your expectations, trying to fit in somewhere, anywhere, everywhere. I want to go back. I want to go back to where I matter, back to when I mattered. When I knew who I was becoming, who I am. Stifled and stuck, tongue-tied. Watching but not seeing. Feeling, sensing, thinking, yet told I was wrong and I couldn't trust myself. Let me go back to where I first began. Being loved and loving in return. No reasons, just because I am. I am here. I feel here, I sense here, I know here. I matter because I am me and I am us, all of us. Scared and scarred, wounded and wounding, sinner and saint, fin, foe, and fiend, and I am friend, foe, and fiend, and I am still here. In me you see the best and worst in yourself, and I am still here, and I am still black. I share those words with you because the struggle to be here, the struggle that we all endure, the struggle that we all undergo to be here, the faith that it takes to just get out the bed, to show up in life, is to be celebrated. For some of us, we barely got out of bed today, and yet you are here. Charlotte did a wonderful job sharing the history. I love sitting in history. I love sitting in the people and the choices and the struggle and the tension. And to say we're still here. We may be crawling, we may be scratching, we may be stumbling, but we're still here. There's something to be said about still being here. The writer of Ecclesiastes says there's a time and season for everything in the sun, under the sun. There's a time to gather and there's a time to scatter. Shawnee has experienced that over the years. And perhaps this is a time of gathering. Maybe this homecoming is the beginning of gathering all kinds of people who you have yet to meet. All kinds of people from all over the corners of the globe who will come in, gay, straight, rich, poor, white, black, brown, yellow. They're going to come in from all the places, and Shawnee has been a place for a diversity of people to come and land and figure some stuff out. And it's been tense. Shawnee is not what it is because everyone got along. Shawnee was a place, a space where people could work out, how can I show up in my own life tomorrow? So a lot of the work I do today is about creating and holding and building what I call brave space. And brave space comes from a poem by Mickey Scott Bay Jones. This is what I've committed my life to, and as I look back over my life, I realized that Shawnee was instrumental in me understanding what I needed in order for me to show up in life. I didn't need a safe space, I needed a brave space. I needed people who were willing to be uncomfortable with my very presence, with my ideas, with where I came from, with what I didn't know, and allowed me to work it out. And you need the same thing. And I want to share these words from Mickey Scott Bay Jones with you because I just want to leave them in the room because I think that these words are such a gift. I think I can remember the poem. She says, together, it's an invitation to brave space. She says, together we create brave space because there is no such thing as a safe space. We live in the real world. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars and we all have caused wounds. But in this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. And we amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility of examining what we think we know. We will not be perfect. This space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be. But it will be our brave space together. And we will work on it side by side. Those words have resonated with me. I found those words while in Cincinnati. While dealing with a situation similar to what happened here in 08. There was another man shot and killed. Racial tension was high. And I had a buddy and we said, how do we bring white people and black people together right now? Not when it gets easier to talk about it, but right now in the midst of it, how do we do that? And we began to explore this brave space and said, we're going to figure out how to be in the same room and have these difficult conversations, and we're going to work this thing through. We don't know what it's going to look like, but we commit to being together. And brave space held the space for us. I believe that this is what Shawnee was for. Conversations that I've had with many of you. Not that we always agree. I would say things that I know would rub you the right way, or maybe the wrong way. But you allowed me to be me in this space, and for that I am forever grateful. Because I take my experience here into so many other spaces. And when I'm dealing with people who don't know how to handle me, who don't know how to interact with me, I know I have this experience and these relationships in my life and in my knapsack, and I can bring them out. And we can slowly try to figure out, what do we want together? What do we want to create together? There's a rabbi, Rabbi Hillel, first century rabbi, and he asked 3 very important questions, and I want to offer those up to you. And those 3 questions are, if I am not for myself, who will be? If I am only for myself, what am I? If not now, when? I think that this may be the challenge for Shawnee going forward. I think it's the challenge of each of us. If you don't know who you are or why you matter, if you aren't for yourself, if you can't defend your own truth, if you cannot stand in who you are, in your somebodyness, who will stand for you? But if you only stand in your somebodyness, if it's only about you and yours, then what are you really? He's getting to, there's a self-interest that we all have. There's a self-interest for getting out of bed this morning and being in this room. We all have a selfish reason for doing it. And that is okay. But when we gather as the body of Christ, when we gather in rooms like this, we become a people. We become a chosen people. We become a body, and we have a shared purpose and a shared interest. And that's what we must struggle to uncover. How can we create space where each of us in our individuality and personalities can show up and say, I'm going to put this to the side for the common good. I'm going to put this to the side for our common good. So we can begin to create what it is that God needs created in the world in Lima today. Because I've come to realize that I can't do it all by myself. Nor do I want to. I'm getting too doggone old. You know what I'm saying? I'm not in the 20s like, hey, I just got the right ideas and we can make it happen. No. We've got to work with real people. But if we wait, if we continue to wait, when will the change happen? If we wait to get into these conversations and to get ourselves in relationships that sometimes make us feel uncomfortable, what will we ultimately create? What will we do? And I believe increasingly that as a Gen Xer, the Gen Xers have to stand up and take a moment of leadership. There's a moment for Gen Xers to do some leading. There's just a quick moment. It may only be 10 years, 20, maybe 5, maybe 2, I don't know. But there's a moment as we're transitioning. I want to speak to the Gen Xers because I think Gen Xers have been the most fearful of authority and responsibility and leadership. We've had some really great examples of leaders who have held the responsibility and they've been doing all the work, and as they retired or as they have died, there's like this gulf of leadership and we're looking for someone to fill the gulf. And I think there's a generation that's on the sidelines, and I want to say to the Gen Xers that it's our opportunity to lead, and this is the definition of leading that I want to offer you, and that is to choose to accept responsibility for enabling others to achieve a shared purpose under conditions of uncertainty. We are not going to go back to pre-COVID times. We need leaders who are not afraid of chaos and uncertainty to fill the void and say, there is something that we can do together. We have a unique set of skills. My generation is the first, we weren't quite integrated, but we were forced to integrate. We were the first integrated generation. We didn't grow up with segregation. So there's something in our lived experiences where we were with people who were different. And there's something unique that we can add in this moment as we transition to the generation that's coming behind, and they're not caught up on all the things that we're caught up on. There's a reason why we're not seeing our young people in our fellowships and in our associations. There's a reason, because we're not connecting with where they are. Our issues aren't their issues, and we got to figure out how to build a bridge in order for all of us to cross back and forth. And I'm so grateful for the elders. I'm so grateful for those who have come before me, who have sacrificed and have fought. Now it's time for them to rest, and we need to just take care of them. It's just time for them to kick back and golf as much as they want to golf. I still want to golf. And so I think that there's a moment for this kind of leadership. But I think that there's a challenge. You're too kind, too kind. So I want to say something to those who are feeling this call, this need to stand in the gap. The folks who are identifying that there's something wrong or something's not quite right, we're not quite sure what to do, but you're feeling that you want to do or you need to do something. I want to say something to you, and it has to do with claiming your real story. It's standing in your real truth. It's not the story that you lead with that gets you promoted or even hired. It's not the story that you put on your resume. I'm not talking about your resume building story. I'm talking about the real story. I'm talking about the story that has given you the values that you have and the perspective that you have, the household you grew up in, and all of its splendor, but also all of its scars. I'm talking about the real lives that we all have, that when we come into social spaces like this, we don't talk about that indecent stuff. We make it nice and vanilla, and we know that vanilla is not getting us there because people are struggling with real things and they need real answers to their real situations. And I want to speak to that. I want to speak to those who don't feel like they're quite up to the par. They're not feeling like they have what it takes, that someone else needs to lead, that someone else needs to do it, that anyone else can do it except for them. I want to speak to you because we need people who can stand in the fragility of their story and not embellish it and not minimize it. It's your story. I grew up in Roundhead. There were good people there, even people who didn't like me. I was treated well by some. I was treated horribly by others. It's just life. I was welcome in certain circles and I was unwelcome in others. We all have those experiences. But don't minimize my experience, and I'm not going to minimize yours. You need to stand in your own truth. And just because your truth may make me uncomfortable, I don't have the right to tell you to make me feel comfortable. I don't get to control you. I've got to struggle with your real story. See, this is what I think Jesus does. You have to look at the pulse, the scandal, the blood, and you have to ask yourself, what role did I play? Was it my silence? Was it my decisions? So, we need to begin to stand in our true story. What is your story? Who are you, and why do you matter? That has to come from within. I believe that we're all created in the image and likeness of God. And that's why we matter. Because we're here. It's not just me, it's you and you and you. Like, we are here. God saw fit for us to be here at this moment in time. I don't believe that God makes mistakes. That's my starting point. Each of us is an expression of who God is. And I didn't grow up in your household, and I did not walk in your shoes, so what you understand about God can inform me and can teach me and can challenge me, and I want to be open to that. And I want to encourage you to be open to that. Stand in your true story. Who are you? Why do you matter? Let's not look to external forces and sources to tell us why we matter. It's not how many people are attending Shawnee United Methodist Church that makes Shawnee matter. There's a rich history here. There's a spirit here that all it needs is a little. The embers are still here. It may not be a blaze, it may not be a bonfire, but the embers are still here. I believe that each of us have the embers of the Holy Spirit in us. And even when we're getting our butts kicked, the embers are still there. And all it takes is just blow on the embers and watch them take off. Put a little fuel on top of those embers and watch it be a blaze, a burning fire. We have that. We all have that. And it's not dependent upon our age or our race or our gender or our decisions. There is a spirit within you that God and only God has placed in you. And you might want to get a little attitude about that and say, God is the one who made me in God's likeness and in God's image. And so if God saw fit to put God's spirit in me, who are you to tell me that God's spirit isn't in me? Greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. Your value doesn't come from anything external. Because if it comes from something external, if that thing that is external stops telling you you're valuable, then you and I sink into a depressed state. Or if they take our investments, they take our money, they take our education, they take from us, what do we have left? So you're made of something more than something external. So who are you and why do you matter? And I believe that there are three types of people. I'm going to keep this thing moving. We're going to get on out of the way. There are three types of people. There are head types, heart types, and gut types. This comes out of the Enneagram. If you are into any kind of like personality tests and all those things, I found this one to be really helpful because it's like it comes out of wisdom traditions. And it says there are head types, heart types, and gut types. And the head types live in fear. That's me. That's how I grew up. Fear is my primary motivation, which means that I have to come up with 3 different plans to make sure that if this plan doesn't work, then I got plan B. If plan B doesn't work, I got plan C. If plan C doesn't work, I've got D all the way down to Z if I can get there. Fearful, fearful, fearful. Fear and Daniel are well acquainted. I thought for the longest I could build a kind of life where I could pretend that I was not afraid. I'm not scared. I just grin and bear it. I just keep my head down and just keep working really, really, really hard. And if that didn't work, I'd find something else to help me try to act like I wasn't scared, but I lived in fear for so long. And then one day I realized that I can't keep fear outside of my house, so I just brought fear in, and I said, Fear, come up to the table, we had tea. And I had to ask Fear, what's up? What do you want? Why are you here? I found out the fear was kind of helpful, and that fear wasn't out to get me. But there are the head types who is fear, the heart types who live in shame. I spent a year on the heart. I'm one that says that I cannot trust the heart, because the heart's like, I feel like this, I feel like, I don't know about anybody else's heart. That's what my heart was like. Ooh, I feel like that, I like that. I don't feel like that, I don't like that. And so the heart for me wasn't as consistent as the head. And so I realized that there are people who live from this shame base, and if someone can come into your life, or some situation comes into your life and makes you feel ashamed, you'll hide. So we got a lot of people hiding because of shame and guilt. Not because of something that they've done, but it's the way that they've been trained by life. It's the way that they were taught. It was the way that they were raised. And you need to be full of shame. You should be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed of yourself. But when God created you in the beginning, and God is the one that chose you before the foundations of the world, and it was God who decided that you were going to be here before your parents even had an idea that you were going to be here, it was God that said that your spirit in you was very good. You know, that's what God says in Genesis, that all of God's creation is good and very good. So where does the shame come from? It's a huge motivator. And then there are the gut types. These are the folks who deal with anger, even if they don't look like they're angry. They're angry. And they're just ready to blow it up. Ready to blow it up. 3 types of people. There's nothing wrong with you. Just realizing that there are 3 types of people, and we're asking 3 different questions. Head types, they're looking for strategy. How? Heart types, why? Gut types, what? 3 different questions. So many times when we're with one another and we're realizing like we can't communicate, we're not on the same page, we're probably asking the wrong question, because I'm trying to figure out strategy. How do we make the thing happen? What's the strategy? And someone else is trying to get to the heart of it. Their hearts aren't even engaged, and I'm ready to do strategy, and I don't have their hearts. We don't have their hearts, and so we're leaving one another behind. And so if we understand that we all come to the table very different, regardless of what we look like, regardless of the things that we think we have in common, realizing that there's someone in the room that's probably a head type, a heart type, or a gut type. And if we slow down and give everyone an opportunity to speak their truth and stand in their story, and know that they actually matter. Your heart matters, your head matters, your gut matters, your anger matters, your shame matters, your fear matters. You matter. And then we begin to find out, what can we do together? But if you bulldoze me or silence me or want to put me off into a corner, and if I want to do the same thing to you, we're not going to get each other's actual support. We will not get real commitments. We'll get our obligations. And the church doesn't need more obligated people. We need people who are passionate and committed to do what it is that they're created to do, and do it through a local assembly. That's what we need. We need people to connect in these social relationships for whatever reason, and begin to figure out how do we move in the community together. We don't all have to get along. We don't all have to agree. But if you have a place where I can show up that I actually belong, I'm going to be more committed to whatever the group wants to do, even if I don't agree with what the group wants to do. But if you only need me for a number, if you only need me for data, if you only need me so that you feel good, that comes out. That's not belonging. That's a transaction. And we all can smell a transaction. Every political season, there's a transaction. We know what that feels like, and the church should not be that. This needs to be the place where you can show up. We have to, I think, deal with this one issue, is that if you show up in your real self, you got to deal with the fact that you are vulnerable. This is why I think Brace Face is important. Can you and I be vulnerable? I was going to share this. There was a sermon that I had that I called, Who Told You You Were Naked? It goes all the way back to Genesis. It goes back to the moment when God says to Adam and Eve, who told you you were naked? Who told you you were vulnerable? Who told you that you couldn't? Who told you that you shouldn't? Who? What situation? When? Because we're going to constantly encounter these moments that hit our heads and our hearts and our guts. And they're going to tell us that we're not the ones. Shawnee doesn't have 1,000 members right now, so Shawnee is not the one. We should look at the church down the street and around the corner. They're the one that's really banging right now. They're the one that's getting all the people. They're the ones doing the great things. Take your eyes off of what's happening out there and begin to look at what is it in this beautiful group of people, the stories, the real lived experiences, the vulnerability that you can hold space for and begin to allow people to actually show up in their greatness and show up in with their scars. Whether I got to work that out with you as a congregation, I worked it out with the staff. We were doing this, trying to figure out how to understand one another, and falling in love with each other in the process. Not because we were perfect, but we were committed to what we were doing. We were trying with everything we had to produce and create. And I think that is Shawnee. That is you. You. And so be mindful and watch out for those who seek to be invisible and play small and hide out and be quiet, and invite them to speak up. Invite them to show up. Invite them to dissent. Invite them to say no to the direction of the group. And see what the Holy Spirit does with our dissent. See what the Holy Spirit does with what it is that we really are, who we are, and where we want to go. Shawnee, what has God promised you? What has God promised you? What do you want, really? What do you want, really? And if you got that thing that you want, what would be different for Shawnee? What would be different for Lima? What would be different for Ohio? I don't know, but you guys held space for me. And we created love together. It's love. Shawnee was on a risk-taking mission at that time. I would encourage you to stir up the gifts that are already in you, to remind yourselves of who you are and where you've been. And for the new ones coming in, remind them, let them know what you've been about, who you are and where you've been. But don't allow yourselves to be handcuffed and bound to where you've been. Know that God is still doing a new thing. There's a time and season for everything under the sun. I believe maybe, Pastor, that this may be a time for Shawnee to gather those who have been scattered. And I pray that God would guide you, that God would lead you, and that you would have the courage and the bravery to follow the leading of the Holy Spirit, both individually and as the beautiful body of Shawnee.